So now, I'm going to kick off the next panel here, and I've got a great panel host who I know for a very long time, and she's an excellent storyteller herself. So I'm going to bring up Yamila Harris to take us through Storytellers. Yamila?
Okay, I know. I am always left to follow the big acts. This is what they do to us. So, first and foremost, I want to make sure, is everyone still awake? I want to hear you louder, HITEC. Are you still awake? You ready for this panel? All right, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay, so we have a pretty tremendous lineup. Quite frankly, I think Marcelo de Santos needs to have a chair embroidered with his name up here. He's been up here so often. But we have a great panel in store for you. We've got so many leaders at HITEC that are not only tremendous leaders, but phenomenal authors and storytellers. Now, how many of you, well, stand up and show me, how many of you have ever read a book? I'm hoping everybody stands up. This is not a trick question. How many of you have listened to an audiobook? Okay. All right. Well, you are the prime candidates for the authors that we're about to bring up because they've got some fantastic books. Take out your notes. Make sure that you notate the books that we're about to talk about. And so without further ado, I'll start to bring these phenomenal gentlemen up. I'm going to take the middle seat here because, you know, I like the attention, so I'm going to sit in the middle. And so let's start by bringing up one of our first speakers here, and I just want to make sure that I don't get anyone's titles wrong, and so we're going to put my glasses on because I'm getting older now. So José Miguel Calderón Gardio, if you'll come up to the stage. So José Miguel is the Global Head of Technology for Commercial Strategy at Johnson & Johnson. He is a former HITEC 100 recipient.
Yes.
And the author of not one, but a series of books, the first of which is titled Elevate the Path to Success. And you can find information on this on his LinkedIn profile, so make sure that you're going to his LinkedIn profile to look this up. The second book, Dialogues and Superpowers, which is I'm waiting for particularly as well. Let's bring up David Olivencia. Now, David, when you talk about OGs of HITEC, is definitely a HITEC OG. He's been around since the beginning of HITEC. He is the SVP of Global Digital Transformation. Oh, sorry, let's not do that. He is the CEO and co-founder of Angeles Investors. You are on a multitude of boards at this point, which we won't go down the list of because it's a myriad. And you now have your book, which is already out, already launched. If you haven't read it, you have to read it. Let me tell you, networking makes a difference. It is the differentiator between good and great when it comes to success and leadership. And so he's got it up here, and that is Networking Excellence, Building a Strong Value-Based Network in an Accelerating Digital World. Yeah, I see the man that needs no introductions over at the end, so we're going to go ahead and start with Carlos Quesada. If you'll come on up. All of those, you know, he's expecting everybody here from HPE to yell a little louder than that. Whoa. All right, very good. Okay, and Carlos is the VP of Customer Experience Strategy, a man after my own heart. That's what I do as well. Also around automation and enablement at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. You were also the co-founder of Unidos.
Unidos ERG.
ERG, yeah. Which is fantastic. And more importantly now, you have your newly published book as well.
That's right.
The Immigrant Survival Guide to
Silicon Valley. That's right.
Very good. I wish I had a Sharpie. I'd write Marcelo's name on this last chair here, but Marcelo de Santos, if you can come on up. Now, Marcelo, again, you've seen his face up there for a few sessions now, but he is the Senior Vice President of Global Digital Transformation at ThoughtWorks. He is, of course, sitting next to the right person because he is the co-founder of Angeles Investors. Among other things, you are also part of the HITEC Board of Directors and on the UNICEF board as well. And coming soon to a theater near you, you have the book Figure 8, which is about to launch on June 1st. Isn't that right, Marcelo?
Yeah, in June. Yes, absolutely.
All right, very good. So make sure that you've taken note of all of these phenomenal books. Now, when we talk about a gathering of storytellers, we all have a story to tell. And as Hispanos, as leaders, male, female, it doesn't matter. We need to get our stories out. Not necessarily in the written form, but it's important that we're getting the stories out and that we're also promoting the stories of our fellow Latinos. So I want to talk a little bit about the journey because it's not easy, right? You all decided to go down the path of writing books. I want to start by asking a question, and anyone can kind of jump in. We'll keep this really organic. But why now? Why did you decide that this was the time to write a book? What was the motivation behind it?
I can tell you the story. Actually, 1 year ago in another panel in HITEC, we were talking about innovation, and actually someone asked me, how do you innovate in your company? And at that time, I gave like 3 tips that I think that were interesting, but I realized that the real answer was a little bit more complex. It's about, leadership. It's about finance. It's about vision and strategy. It's about even managing your internal stress and feel okay. So I realized that we have moments of truth, and I wanted to tell about those moments of truth. So what I did is try to get from, perhaps the gurus on those topics, what are their thoughts, what are their points of view, and put in a book that can help you every time that you have a difficult moment in your life, when you have this big conference, you are applying to a job, you want to be in another company, or you are struggling internally. How help you? And that was the reason. I think that was important. I want to tell about that.
Okay, very good. Does anyone else want to share what their inspiration was?
So I'll start with mine. I've read thousands of books, right? And you start reading books and you say, maybe there's a book in me at some point. I think as I progressed more in my career, and I said, okay, I want to write a book. What the heck am I going to write this book on? And, I did the senior technology executive route, multiple Fortune 100s. I helped found some leading non-for-profits like HITEC and Angeles Investors. And I started thinking about what's the big component. And everybody said, Dave, you're really good at networking. Wow, you're all so connected. I'm like, thank you, but I've been working at it. And I said, I'm going to write a book on networking. Everybody says I'm pretty good at it, but I really kind of don't know how or why I'm good at it. But and I started thinking, well, it's one of the top skills if you want to accelerate your career, get promotional velocity, more rapidly accomplish your goals. Everybody says it's networking, right? So, I sat out and I wrote it, and it's been an amazing ride. And I think to your point, like, why now? I say, why not, right? We all got great stories in us. We all got great leadership examples. And so that's why I wrote the book and why now. Is it like, why not? Let's get it out there.
Very good. And Carlos, if you can share a little bit as well, because I know that yours literally just launched.
Yeah, my book launched. It's funny, this is a full circle moment. So if you guys were in Orlando last year for HITEC, I actually announced the pre-order of my book on my birthday, October 4th, which was during the HITEC 100 Awards. And it officially launched on Amazon middle of March, so it's out there now, right? But going back to your question about why, right? So aside from my day job, I also am pretty active in DEI at HPE. I am the executive sponsor of Juntos, the employee resource group. And as you mentioned, we co-founded kind of I call it the HITEC of ERG. So the whole goal is to bring ERG leaders together to collaborate and drive best practices. And so I find myself on a lot of stages like this, kind of sharing my story and also sharing, being interviewed about how do you deal with imposter syndrome, how do you network, right? We've touched on the importance of coach, mentor, and sponsors. And so these are themes that are reoccurring when we're talking especially to early career folks. And so the why now, just like Dan, I'm a person of faith, and I feel like God speaks to me in dreams and repetition, and the name of the book came to me in a dream. I wish I was smart enough to come up with that name of The Immigrant Survival out of Silicon Valley, but it was something that I couldn't forget the next morning, so I knew that I had to write this book. And so it took me a couple of years to get it done, but we finally got it done, and I'm very, very excited about a lot of the feedback that we're getting, but the why is I feel like, I, born and raised in Mexico, came to the US, and I've had a very untraditional path. And I feel that the more and more I tell my story, the more I realize it's not unique. And I think it's important for people to realize that, the success staircase isn't linear, right? And so a lot of the themes in this book is really to go in and encourage those folks who think that maybe they can't because they didn't start off right. And so that purpose of the book is to help people really kind of understand some of the similarities. And it's not the Latino guide on purpose, because I think that as immigrants, we all share a lot of virtues. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that this book really resonates with all communities, not just the Latino community.
No, absolutely. And I think, quite honestly, this is something, you talk about it being relatable and the fact that the story wasn't necessarily unique as you started to tell the story. I mean, what's normal, right?
Right.
Normal is absolutely subjective, and I think this is why I say I think everyone has a story in them, even though we'll find similarities in some of the points in our path. There's just so many forks in the road and deviations that make us all so unique that it's great to see the points that connect us, but really interesting to see all those things that make us different as well.
Exactly.
And now Marcelo, of course, figure eight. For how many of you, how many of my EEP folks are in the room right now? Whoa, that was sad. that was so sad, like the angels were crying. Come on. All right, very good. So some of you already got to hear from Marcelo when he talked a little bit about figure eight, but Marcelo, if you can share for the folks in the room that weren't with us at EEP, what was your, why now moment?
Why now? Well, first it was a combination of things, right? First was I've been working on technology innovation for many years, and I had challenges on driving innovation in a sustainable way, maybe in larger organizations, less of a challenge when you are working with smaller organizations, driving innovation in UNICEF, which is a large nonprofit with very aspirational goals, and you need to go through a lot of, approvals to get things done. And that's one reason. I thought that was a motivation for me to put those learnings into the book. The second aspect of the why is we are living in times in where technology is changing so rapidly and frequently that I was feeling that we are losing our basic human-centric leadership capabilities and qualities. And I wanted to make sure that I could find this framework to make us reflect and act on how to become better leaders in times where technology is changing our lives, our businesses, society, regulations, everything around us. And last but not least, and maybe most importantly, is yes, I had the idea of the book, and I was a kind of, I would say, committed to it, but I was super lucky to have close to me a person like David that one day called me and said, I wrote the book, you should write one. And after a week, he called me again and said, did you start? And after 3 weeks, where are you with your book? So it's always good to have a co-pilot in anything that you do, right?
An accountability coach here.
Absolutely, it keeps you accountable. So that's why. Honestly, I want to give back many, many stories that I collected through
I
many
love
years.
that. Okay, so now you all decided you were going to write a book. You opened your laptop or you took out the notepad and a pen. You spent a weekend, easy peasy. The book was done. Everything was good, right? No, not quite, right? So I don't think that the folks in the room know just how deep the process is for getting a book published, beginning to end, and, quite frankly, probably all of the not just timeline issues, right? But everything that you go through in terms of your families, in terms of your personal life, your professional life. There's a lot of time invested in this. Do any of you want to talk a little bit about, one, maybe we can talk a little bit about the process, right, and how long that took. But two, I'd love to hear, and I'm sure, how many of you would like to hear about, like, the impact that it had beyond just the writing, right? The personal impact that it had, whether it was in their families, with work, and so forth. Show of hands. All right, good. This is my way of making sure people are still paying attention, so I will continue to ask questions. All right? Okay, so does anyone want to start a little bit with kind of like what this process looked like and kind of the impact that it had?
I think that you need two different things. First, to have clarity on what you want to tell. You need to have clarity on what is the story. And I think that all of us are clear on what is the story, but then you need to find the right time. So at some point, you need to say, okay, in my case, was every Sunday, for sure, every Sunday, for at least a year. If not, there's no way to do anything. From like 5:30 to like 9:30, so these are my hours. And sometimes some Saturdays, but usually it's the Sunday. That is my time that I'm really, really concentrated and producing very, very fast because you have a lot of ideas that you want to tell. That's your special time, your special moment where you are really productive. But the most important thing first is to know what you want to tell. You need to know what your story, and that's the discussion, how you're going to organize. It's going to be more clear, it's going to be more catchy, but you need to have the ideas very clear.
So you had a very disciplined timeline. This is your time. It's going to happen every Sunday. What role did your family play in this in terms of you being able to get this accomplished?
Well, I mean, basically, be quiet during that time. Give me the space and really, I mean, help on because at some point it's difficult and you don't know exactly how to manage something. So always to have a person in your family that you are a little bit struggling and help you with some advice that usually is different to what you're thinking. So if you are open, you are really listening, it can be very, very helpful. So, I mean, advice and give me the time for me was absolutely perfect.
Okay. Marcelo, if you can share a little bit as well?
No, absolutely. First of all, I had no idea how to write a book, right? And absolutely no idea. And also a little bit of an imposter syndrome, right? I was like, okay, English is not, it's my second language. I will never be able to do this. David coached me on what's the process to get there, get close to a company that actually put the pace and the process for me to learn how to write a book, how to think about the idea, how to structure a table of contents, how to write a chapter, how to write a hook, what's the structure of this? And then you get into a process of 9 to 10 months, it took me, right, from the beginning up until now, right? And basically, my process was Saturdays and Sundays. I haven't had, honestly, weekends for 6 or 7 months. I'm not kidding. Almost no weekends, right? Because Saturday and Sunday, that was my time to write. And also I was leveraging the fact that Monday nights I have calls with China from 9 p.m. to 12 Eastern. So I was staying awake up until 4 or 5 a.m. And that was, honestly, it was a super productive time for me to write. The best chapters, based on my judgment, you will be better than me.
You'll get to judge, right?
Were those nights, right? I struggle. I'm super happy that I have my wife, Ana Paula. She's in the acknowledgements for many reasons, but specifically because one day I quit writing the book. It was a Saturday morning. I said, listen, I'm too busy. I'm dealing with so many things at work. This doesn't come natural to me after 3 or 4 weeks, right? And she said, La Peruana, she used different words, but she said, you figure it out. She said, get back on that seat and do your job. Right? Pretty clear indications. But family has been, family, friends have been extremely helpful.
Yeah, so I'll just keep it up here. No worries. So just going back to Marcelo, I've known Marcelo a long time, and I just said, he's such an amazing leader with so many experiences, and he was telling me his concept. I said, man, you got it. It was more of like, you got to put that out, Marcelo. You got to put that out. So I'm so excited that it's going to be launching here in June, and if you haven't pre-ordered it, get out there on Amazon. So that's my play. All the books here. You can chat GPT this, but I think 10% of the people who start to put out, they say, hey, I'm going to write a book. Only like 10% of the people, it might even be less than that, actually finish it, right? So it is a journey, and most of us are technology leaders, right? So it's also a new industry, right? We're tech leaders, but this whole book publishing industry, it's a whole different animal. Like Marcelo, and then if you decide to write a book, and all of you have a story behind you, some level of expertise, but you have a spectrum of where you can go. You can, on one side, you could self-publish, put it out there, and on the other side, you can work with the big publishers, the Wileys and all that kind of stuff. Or you can go in the middle, and that's the route that I took, and I believe Marcelo took, where it's in cohorts and it's coaching and there. So I did that. It's about a year. My style was more half hour here every day-ish, maybe some long ones on the weekends, maybe a week I didn't write anything at all, depending on what was going on. Family they've always been supportive in everything I've done. But it's interesting because you lay out chapters. You're working with an editor and a coach. At least in the model that I had was working with so you were preparing for that. And then you get to these different phases where you put out a manuscript, and then you go through final editing, and then you get it like this book cover, right? By the way, you get all these designs for book covers, and you get to pick with it. But one of the things I talk about too is that you think it's writing the book is like the big thing, and it's actually like a third of it, right? Because you gotta like promote it and speak on it and get out and all that kind of stuff, which is a whole nother thing. And then how do you get it on Amazon and marketing ads on Amazon and all that kind of stuff. And then the last part it's like a business because you're selling it and you're also speaking on it and all kinds of stuff. So that's a little bit how the process went for me.
Okay, very good. And Carlos, I know that you had a very different
Very different. I was listening to all this and I was like, oh, that's not totally.
He's like, nope.
Just true to brand, very, very untraditional, I guess, right? As I mentioned, I had no intention of writing a book, and I didn't know anybody that had written a book personally, right? And so, again, I kind of really landed on, once I got the title, what's this book going to be about? And I, started talking to my friends and family about it. And then I landed on, there's all these topics that we're always discussing, and it's something that rather than the 50 or 100 students that happen to be in the room listening to us speak, why not write this down and expand the scope and expand the audience? But yeah, I wish I was that structured. I'm not. And the interesting thing about my book is it took me so long to finish it that I had to go back and change the bio like a couple of times. Because when I first started writing it, I was like a senior director at Aruba. And by the time I was done, as you guys heard today, I had a career transition, VP of HPE. So now that whole thing changed. Yeah, thanks. So there was a lot of it's almost like you run the risk of never being done because the longer it takes, the more you have to go back and change, right? And to me, life gets in the way, right? Yeah. Life gets in the way. And knowing myself, I knew that I needed to surround myself by accountability partners. And so I would tell everybody and their grandmother that I was writing this book. Because what would happen is the next time they saw me, they're like, hey, so what's up with the book? You almost done? So kind of like what you guys had going on, times like 50, right? Yeah. And then I made the mistake of getting super excited. It was my birthday at the last HITEC, and I'm like, I'm almost done, so I'm just going to announce it. So I announced it and pre-order, come on. 4 months into it, people were like, dude, where's this book? I paid already for it. Did it get lost in the mail? Like, what's going on, right? But building that accountability network was super important because it really forces you, like, look, like people are actively waiting for this, right? And so that helped. But for me, I would say the last mile was really important for me. I needed to get away. I'm from a very, very small town in Mexico, and I would say there was just too much noise around my day-to-day. So I decided I was going to go to Tequila, Mexico, if anybody knows where Tequila, Mexico is. Yeah. And I decided to be a local for 2 weeks. I got an Airbnb, and I said, I'm not leaving until this thing's done. So I would say I finished it up mostly over there. And actually the photo, I'm a big tequila connoisseur guy. So the photo in the back of the book is me at the Fortaleza Distillery
Love it.
in tequila, because I figured it's who I am. So yeah, that was my process.
That's fantastic. So we've got about 9 months, 9-ish months, about 10-ish months.
10-ish, yeah.
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Close to a year.
Close to a year, right? And you've got a series coming out, right?
It's the second year.
He's starting the entire. It's like the Star Wars saga. All right, very good. So now I'm kind of curious. We've talked a little bit about the process. You've talked about family. I mean, we can get a little bit personal if you're willing to as well, right? Because I know that a lot of the other gentlemen up here talked about the fact that they had, their partners as support. In your process, you actually had a lot of life change as well, not just career change.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk about that. All right. So when I talk about I had to go back and update the book, when I started the book, I was married. When I finished, I wasn't, right? The book had nothing to do with it. But I will say, it's funny because when I sent the book out to my group of friends and they looked at the dedication page, they actually said, dude, there's a typo. It says to my wife and kids, right? And I said, regardless of what the current status is, she was as much part of this journey than I was, so I didn't want to change that part, right? So it's still dedicated to my wife. And then, thank you. And then from the personal perspective, if you guys ever pick up a copy of the book, the little kid in the reflection is actually my son. And so the cover of the book is actually my friend Omar, who is a program manager at Apple. And the intention here is it's his first day on the job, and he's walking into his big glass high-tech building, and he's seeing himself as a child as a reflection, and the distance between the two is how long they've come. And I've actually realized that the backpack that he's carrying is actually the cultural baggage we all carry when we walk into those buildings, right? We all hear about bringing your whole self to work, and I feel like that's important, but I also feel it's important to leave the cultural baggage at the door. How many of you guys have heard of Calladito te ves más bonito? Yeah, it's those rocks you got to leave in the backpack and leave them at the door, right? So to me, there's a lot of personal, obviously, change during this, a lot of personal growth doing this, fighting the imposter syndrome, right? Who the hell am I to write a book? Who's want to read this for me, right? So I would say there was a lot of that as well, and then career growth too. I mean, aside from the promotion, we actually lifted and shifted from Aruba to HP. There was a lot of transition.
Yeah.
So life really did. I probably could have written this in a year, maybe less than a year, but life gets in the way, and that's
Absolutely.
And again, being a person of faith, God's will, God's time, and this thing came out when it needed to come out.
So okay, how many of you can resonate? Because I think most everyone at some point or another has experienced imposter syndrome.
What's that?
Right? Yeah, what's that? Yeah. Technically, stand up if you've never experienced imposter syndrome
If you're standing,
in
sit
your
down.
life. All right. Okay, you're smart for not and even the people standing in the back are trying to sit down. I like it. Smart crowd. Crouch down. Very good. Yeah, and I think that's the reason why this resonates so much, and one of the reasons why I think it's so important that you all are up here, because to everybody that is out there, just be aware that even these gentlemen that are publishing their books or have published their books have gone through those moments, and it's about how you push forward. So what are the choices that each of you are going to make in order to move forward, get past the hurdle and tell your story in whatever way, shape, or form that is, whether it's mentoring, whether it's the book, whether you're, you've always wanted to start that podcast, right? Whether it's talking to the person next to you, right? But the storytelling is so important. On that note, I wanted to ask each of you a question. It's, if you were to, I guess, sum up in a couple of sentences, what is the key takeaway that you would want readers to come away with if they read your book? Oh, sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. When they read your books, all right? What is that? What is that morsel of wisdom that you want for them to walk away with from reading your book?
I mean, for me, I come from a very, very small town in Mexico, raised in hog farms, and I now work for the company that started Silicon Valley, right? Not the most traditional path, didn't get a chance to go to a big university, but here I am as a VP of customer experience for HPE, right? And so my story is everybody's story, right? So for me, it doesn't matter how you start, right? It's what you do to go and kind of break through that. So to me, I hope that the book brings that hope and inspiration, that it doesn't matter what your background is or where you come from, you too can achieve it, right?
Yeah, and your story actually resonates with me quite a lot, right? Because I did not follow the traditional path whatsoever.
And every time I bring this up, this is the common response. Again, this is what I'm saying. Like, my story is absolutely not unique. Like, I've had so many awesome conversations with folks here that have had the chance to at least hear or read it, and they're like, dude, this is me. And so that's the part that I'm really feel real privileged about.
And Josemi, again, you've got 3 on the way, right? But tell me a little bit about kind of that progression and what it is that you want for folks to walk away with from each of those steps in the series.
Okay, there is before the series, there is something, there is a story that I don't tell in the book. That is my own story.
Yeah.
My parents couldn't go to school. I don't mean college, I mean school. So it means that they could do like basic jobs for all their lives, and they were always struggling. So I realized the importance of education since I was a kid. So it changed the way I am and what is important for me. So you will see always that I'm trying to help people to have a better education, to really, be successful and help people with the how, because if you have a problem, you can make it. The reason of the book, the reason of many things that I do is try to help people when they are in a difficult moment of truth in their lives, because there is already a way, there is a how, and I'm trying to help on that how. The first book is about the specific hows. The second is to inspire more, because sometimes it's not that you have a struggling, it's that you can go beyond. So the second book is about stories of people that have been extremely successful. What is the way of managing all the fears or all the decisions that they have in life? And I think that it's different for each one of the people that are there, absolutely great people. And at the very, very end, you realize what are our superpowers as a Latino community. And that's what I want to tell. You can make it if you just have enough help, enough support.
Y el tercero es una novela.
Yeah, that's more difficult. That's more difficult.
So David, tell us a little bit about what you want folks to walk away with. What is that nugget of wisdom?
Yeah, so in the book, the word work is capitalized in networking because it requires a hell of a lot of,
it does.
A lot of work if you want to be excellent at networking, right? The book, I'm a tech guy, and I've done consulting, I've done investing, all kinds of stuff. But people tell you, get out there and network. Oh, you got to you want to get out there and network. Be like, nobody really tells you how.
Yeah.
Right? How do you do it efficiently, and how do you do it in an excellent way? So I interviewed 30 people or so that were excellent at networking. I studied, I've researched all of it, I packed it all into the book. And I lay out a methodology, right, which is about having a strong foundation, executing on that, and then optimizing it. But I pack it with stories, and there's 2 stories in the book that are high-tech related, right? High-tech, this is probably one of the strongest technology leadership networks in the world. that just happens to have a Hispanic flavor to it, right? I was fortunate to co-found it with others, but I share two HITEC stories. I share one HITEC story about 3 or 4 years in, we were able to open up the NASDAQ, right? But to make that moment happen was a ton of work and a ton of networking to make that happen. That's one story. The second story is, I don't know if Daryl Higueros is in here, but Daryl's there. Daryl's there. And I mean, there's probably other HITEC stories, but these come to mind. Daryl had a family relative pass away and had some challenges getting the body from the United States to Honduras, I believe. Guatemala, sorry. Thank you, Daryl.
It's all the same. No, it's easy.
And in an amazing way, with the help of several HITEC leaders, Juan Carlos Gutierrez, if he's in here as well, they were able to make that happen. But it all comes down to the work, the networking, the time that they put in over the years to make it happen. So those would be the key things that I would share. I also share a phenomenal story about Marcelo and climbing Everest and how that leads to purpose, which is another part. But that would be the key things.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got to tell you, like even in my own career, I mean, I got to a point where I would watch and I would see, it's like I would hear high potential, top leader, right? But I would watch as folks continued to progress, and I kept my head down and said, I'm going to work hard. Work hard. That's what I do, right? I'm going to work hard, and everybody's going to notice, and all is going to go great. And I had one mentor that really came up to me and said, Yamila, it's not that any of the people around you are smarter than you, because they're not. It's not that they're working harder than you, because they're not. It's the social capital. And the social capital is such a huge differentiator. Now, no one believes me when I say this, but I'm going to repeat this for the 100th time. I am an introvert. And while I can get up on stage and do quite well, in social settings, I tend to get to a point where I withdraw, I'm done, I want to walk away. And it was very difficult for me to network. And little morsels, like, when you talk about the book and when I talk about my mentor, little things like just taking the 5 extra minutes, if you're uncomfortable, take 5 extra minutes, try and meet at least one other person or talk to someone that you wouldn't normally talk to before you, walk out of this conference, as an example, right? Those 5 extra minutes each time is practice, and every time that you go to the next conference or you try to network again, you're able to take another 5 minutes and another 5 minutes until it starts to become natural. And networking is a skill that you learn, and I advise all of you to take advantage, especially all of you, with the number of exceptional people that are in this room with you today. Gene said it 100 times, right? Go get the QR codes. Go beyond getting the QR codes. Make sure you're taking a moment to ask questions and really network. All right, and now I'm going to go over to Marcelo, because Marcelo, I also want to, because Carlos talked, I mean, it was pretty deep when he started talking about the cover of the book. And I know that there's some deep sentiment on the cover for your book as well. So if you can talk a little bit about that a second, and then tell us a little bit about your morsel of wisdom also.
Oh, absolutely. When you read my book, what you're going to find at the beginning is a story, right? It's a story where a person called Tindu, climbing partner, we were together in Everest, he saved my life, right? And the way he saved my life was in a moment in where I was, suffering a pulmonary edema. That means that you don't have one lung working. When you are at 7,000, 8,000 meters, that's a pretty bad situation to be in, right? And I always remember that moment in where my legs started to feel very cold, and everything around me was getting dark. And Tindu, he knew I was always hanging laminated picture of me and my wife in the tent, and he got the picture from from the backpack, and he was waving the picture in front of my face, right, and saying, "Gird up on your feet," right? I mean, and she was waving the picture saying, "She's waiting for you. She's your future, your future." And when I came back after many years, and we're very good friends now, I was thinking that when we try to drive innovation in our companies, when technology is really changing every day, many times we feel lost. We feel that we don't have the resources to lead in those situations. And I took some inspiration from the way Tindu was leading me, right, and giving me a different future. So my objective with the book is that you take time to reflect of the many stories you're going to find in the book, to become leaders that can drive innovation in a world in where exponential technology is the norm, but do it in the right way.
People-centric, at the center of everything, right? The human factor. And I know you talk about the fact that the figure eight actually is a knot.
Yeah, I mean, that's an analogy, right? Figure eight is a knot that is very strong under load, but it's very easy to untie. So it's about learning and unlearning, learning and unlearning. So the versatility of the knot is also part of the philosophy of the leadership framework that you find in the book. Thank you for reminding me.
No, absolutely, yeah. So I want to know how many of you, after hearing from these wonderful high-tech leaders, are excited to pick up copies of the books. And okay, all right. Remember, I have high expectations. Soy cubana, I like noise. So, you know, I will. So, okay, one last time I want to hear, show your excitement for the gentleman on the stage before we go to Q&A. All right. That's what I want to hear. Okay. You have earned your cafecitos. Very good. All right. So we've got about 2 minutes left. If any of you gentlemen on the stage want to add one more comment, and then we'll go to Q&A.
I'll just do the shameless plug, guys.
Yeah.
The one way that you can support not just us, but any author, is just leave a review, make a comment, you know, whatever. That really goes a long way. That's what really helps the algo, if you guys know, right? We're in tech. So please leave a review, 5 stars, really appreciated.
If you can do it for your Uber driver, you can do it for them.
Right, that's right.
Okay? Just remember that.
Amazon's going to start tipping soon. Just kidding.
A quick comment. I mean, all the proceedings from the Elevate series will be designated to the HITEC Foundation in order to support, I mean, the amazing job that they do.
Beautiful.
All right. And I see a lovely line of folks ready to ask questions, which makes me thrilled as can be. So Susana, you want to start us off?
I will start us off. Hola, Susana Ramirez, Executive Director of HITEC from Costa Rica, so pura vida.
Woo!
First of all, I wanted to say thank you to everybody on the panel and sharing your stories. When we were looking at, you know, building the agenda for this event, I knew that I wanted this to be a session. I talked to Carlos about it very early on. And the reason why is because you have persevered through the process of writing a book and are sharing your story. Part of the reason of HITEC is so that we can enable the folks in this room to understand their story and bring it to the table and be able to articulate it as a value add to each of their, you know, corporations that they serve. Can you please tell me a little bit more about how to inspire everybody here to dig in and understand their story and be able to share it then with others? Maybe not write a book, but definitely be able to say it in 5 minutes or less.
Anyone want to
I have a quick, so in my book, I talk about the ikigai. Anybody heard what the ikigai is? It's really about finding your purpose, right? And
I was going to say, I know a lot of
it's
ikigais, but it's probably a different meaning.
It's a Japanese term, which is your reason for being. It's 4 concentric circles that you really have to reflect on and put in the work. It's operating at the center of what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. I think if you focus on there, you're going to find what your ikigai is, and I think that's one area, potentially of several, but I think a key area you can write your book on.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that?
For me, I would say that I think, we have to recognize that, we're not here by accident, and we obviously are really good at something that we do, and it's important to share, right? And for me, I'm a product of HITEC, right? I'm EEP alum, top 100, I board, I was raised here. And one of the things I always tell my mentees when they're like, well, hey, Carlos, I really appreciate it, thank you. I was like, don't take me, bring 3, right? And so for me, it's all about how do we give back, right? And so to me, this is an easy way of bringing more than 3.
That's a social media post. Don't thank me, bring 3.
Exactly. right?
T-shirts and merch will follow.
Don't thank me, bring 3.
Absolutely. Yeah, Fernando's going to use it in the next CEP session, for sure.
Trademark Carlos Quesada royalties.
He's jotting it down.
You heard it here first.
It's a sticker.
Yes.
Sticker.
T-shirts.
All right, and so we
Yeah.
have Jesse.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the session. It's been awesome. I do have a question. I always find it fascinating just to understand how, when you're in the process, what did you do when you kind of hit a writer's block? Did you have a little routine? Did you have something that kind of broke you out of whatever it was that was causing the block? I'm just always interested to hear kind of how people react or what they do to
When they hit that
get
wall or
through
that block,
Yep.
yeah. I was going to say, in Marcelo's case, he had his wife to tell him to get off his rear and keep writing.
Yeah, I think I always remember that Saturday morning, right, when I said, listen, this is too much. And I tell you, I was going to send an email to this company saying, it's okay, I cannot make it happen, would you give me a refund? And, I think I mentioned before, having people around you that understand you and why you are doing what you're doing and how important it is for you, that's key, because when you forget that, because you will forget that one day, they can remind you, right? And they can get you back to work, as Ana Paula did, and that makes a whole difference. It happened to me a couple of times, right? It's not the second time I didn't want to quit, but it was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna have time to get to because they ask you, you need to get to 10,000 words for this day, 14,000 words. I said, oh my God, I'm not sure I'm gonna make it. And I push it through, right? And I have friends, I have the colleagues in the cohort that were helping me, and I was seeing also that they were also struggling with the same thing. So you kind of feel like, en Argentina decimos, mal de muchos, consuelo de tontos, but it's still still helping, right? So your network and your red de contención, it's extremely important.
So the important thing is to note, is your backspace key now completely rubbed off? No. All right. Did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, in the moment what I do when you realize that you are actually undoing instead of doing, because you cannot, or you are like too busy, or this is impossible, I think at some point you need to relax, and you need to reorganize your priorities, and you need to figure out, okay, this is not about suffering, this is not about stress, and relax a little bit, see things, do nothing for 5 minutes, down all the elevate dopamine and write down the stress, breathing a little bit, and then maybe today is not the day, maybe I need to give me a little bit of time. Like when I start talking to other people that inspire me, because it's something that has something of being extrovert is that when you talk to people, inspire you. So then, a week later, I have 20 more ideas that I want to write down. So that, Sunday that was not very productive, 1 week later is the most productive maybe in 3 months, because you have so many things that you realize that you want to have there. So that, give you some time, don't pressure yourself, because if not, you are not going to be productive, and at some point, this is it.
Okay. All right, and we have Miriam.
So I have 2 questions. Carlos, fortaleza, reposado o añejo? Question 1.
So let's let him answer that one before you answer,
Yes.
before you ask the second.
In its most purest form, blanco.
Blanco's delicious. Did you taste it down in the Bat Cave?
I did.
Oh my God, I was just there.
Absolutely.
Anyone wants to know? I'm a big fan of going to tequila. It's about,
Fortaleza, Cascahuín, Atanasio.
yes, all the artisan tequilas. You realize there's more than Cuervo in the world.
Yeah, other than my name rhyming with tequila, I have no association with tequila.
Well, you don't know what you're missing out on. And the town of Tequila, I totally get why you went there. It's about 3 hours, 3.5 hours from my house in Mexico. It's perfect. Okay, here's my serious question. So it's very timely that you're talking about this because I just did a podcast interview and it seems like, I don't know if it's because I'm getting to be an old lady, but people are interviewing me about my life's journey a lot lately. It's probably my age. And little known fact is that I've had an outline for a book for many years. It has 16 chapters. They're all named. I've only written the first part of chapter 1. And you all described, so I came to this from the interview I just did for a podcast with Stacy. What was, you all intellectually answered how you got to write the book? When Yamila asked you that question, it was very intellectual, except for Marcelo, who said David harassed him.
I can harass
That wasn't too intellectual. But what was the spark? What was the feeling that you had to get from thought to paper? Because listen, I'm a great storyteller. I can do it all day long. But I haven't, and I wrote the chapter names down. They're very creative. But I haven't had the spark to go from thinking about my story in these 16 episodes to actually putting pen to paper, or I guess fingers to keyboard. What was that spark in you?
Can I take a second one? So what I would say is, you're a great storyteller. We've all heard you speak. What I would say is, think about it differently. You don't have to sit down and put pen to paper. Imagine that you're going to give a keynote on chapter 1, chapter 2, right? And record yourself giving that keynote, transcribe it to text, and then that gets you going.
That's
And then you
an
just get the momentum.
incredible.
Yeah, because I mean, all of us can talk ourselves out of anything, right?
Yeah.
So give me a topic and I can talk about it for hours. That's one of your chapters, right? Record yourself like you're giving that keynote, and then that at least gets you going, and then you can add the written part to it afterwards as well.
I love that.
That's very, very practical. I like it.
And then if you have a good reposado with you, it accelerates.
Yeah.
The words flow better.
Absolutely.
I'm an añejo drinker, so just saying.
What,
Yeah.
One thing I would, so like,
Don't call and harass me, David.
no, I'm good at that, so I can do it. No, I mean, to start my process, I had to lay down an investment, right? So there's nothing more incentivizing when you have to lay down an investment to start the process.
Yep.
And then I like structure, so it was a bit of a structured process, kind of step by step what you have to do. And then you have a coach, and it's kind of an accountability coach in sessions, and I think that helps you along the way. And then, you know, as you get into it, the light gets bigger at the end of the tunnel, so it's a bit motivating, and I think that kind of carried me through as well.
So I have, I mean, since the idea till the book, there is something in between that I didn't mention. That is that I started doing like 1 or 2 minutes TikTok with the keynote that I wanted to say. So I made around 100. So there are 100 TikToks that you also can watch that summarize in Spanish this time, not in English. In Spanish, I mean, the things that I wanted to say in the book. So after telling the story, I feel more comfortable writing it down. So at the beginning,
Similar to,
yes,
to what Carlos was mentioning.
exactly the same. At the beginning was just tell a story, so you feel more comfortable. You realize, no, it doesn't work like this. You need to change a little bit. And then now this is a story. It works. It makes sense. I mean, you hear yourself telling the story and looks interesting. Then you're ready to put in a book, because it's really difficult to do that. It's more difficult to do than to say.
Thank you.
All right, and I cannot read your name tag from here, so if you can,
Montserrat. My name is Montserrat,
okay?
and I wanted, first, it was very inspirational. I love listening to your stories and your purpose. I want to say that my mentor, JC from AWS, who was, by the way, networking outside, recommended your book, David. And I was looking for it on Amazon and I couldn't find it. So I'm so glad I not only found the book, but the author. So I'll go ahead and...
I gotta check with Amazon. One of my friends on Amazon.
Yeah, so this was better. But one thing is, it was great that my mentor is promoting your books through the mentee. So again, I think I really want to reinforce this. I will do it myself. I will buy your books, give a 5-star review and comments, and recommend it to people. Because I feel like I want to support you. I know your stories, I know your books, and I would ask everybody to do the same if you can. And the one thing I want to ask you is, what was the one thing that inspired you? Is there like one trigger that made you think, I have to write this book? Because if you think about it 10 years ago, and I don't know if it happens to anybody else, but you think of an author, of somebody writing in a room, and that's all they do. But most of you have different type of jobs, and on top of that, you're writing books. So what was the one thing that inspired you or motivated you to do it?
Well, for me, like I mentioned, is I felt like it's something God asked me to do, and so I'm very excited to have that monkey off my back. Ya cumplí, so I'm
Yep.
good.
And I'm conscious that we have the red light that's been, blinking at us. So if any of you also want to give a...
Mine's quick. You just give back. I've been given so much, and share those great stories of networking. It's such a vital skill.
All right. Very good. Okay. A big round of applause.